Today on Hearts of Heroes, days of heavy rain bring dangerous flooding to northeastern Oklahoma.
We were in shock. Everything was underwater.
With countless farms overcome by the water, a team of cowboys risked their lives to move hundreds of stranded animals to safety.
So 3 of us get in a boat, go over there. When we get in the pen with the horses, I mean, they're wild.
And later, when a bomb cyclone passes over Nebraska, a rescue goes awry, leaving some people stranded.
Now we have 2 vehicles stuck, the airboat sunk. We've got 2 patients and 2 dogs and rescuers that need to get out of here.
Heroes are the best of humanity in the worst of times.
When parts of Oklahoma were just tortured with unrelenting rain for more than a week, communities surrounding Tulsa found themselves in a true flood emergency. Thankfully, first responders were right there to jump in and help. But it wasn't just humans who needed rescue. There were many animals in the danger zone, too.
About a half hour east of Tulsa, Oklahoma, you'll find rural communities Catoosa and Coweta, nestled between the Arkansas and Verdigris rivers. In addition to the large commercial farms, there's a solid community of small ranches where they are proud to know each other.
It's a very nice community. You know, the mail lady comes down and she talks to you about the other neighbors, and everybody just kind of keeps in touch. People know people around here.
Although Oklahoma is known for tornadoes, flooding can also be a problem.
When we get it really good. It comes in spurts, but when we get rains, it'll be a downpour for hours.
And in May of 2019, for many, the rain just never seemed to let up.
In this case, we'd have 4, 5, 6 inches of rain, and we'd catch a day or two of good weather, and then we'd catch another 5 inches of rain. And all of our lakes at the time were actually 20%, 30% down.
There was a flash flood warning. However, I believe that we have a propensity for becoming desensitized to warnings because we receive them so often.
It's not that we weren't taking it seriously, but we also just wanted to wait a little bit and, to see how it was going to play out. But this time around, it did not stay back. It just came and came and came and came.
It's very important to remember that not only are natural disasters seemingly unpredictable, but so are the conditions caused by them. Just because this specific area has never flooded before, doesn't mean it won't.
After days of downpours, the ground was saturated and the water had nowhere to go. And then, another slow-moving storm tortured them with more rain.
At the time the storm came, we were actually effecting voluntary evacuations. Those voluntary evacuations turned into rescues, at which point we were responding to 911 calls of several feet inside of homes.
Give y'all an idea how deep this water is. I'm on Keith's Bridge. My truck's up on high ground. I can feel this bridge moving.
I left work and met my sister, and we came out here to Dad's and started packing up and picking everything up to higher ground. And I said, it's time to go now. And not knowing what was going to happen to the home and having to drive away was unbearable.
Water levels were rising fast, and with the Arkansas River to the west and the Verdigris River to the east, all low-lying areas were now at risk. Coweta rancher Casey Thomas knew that it was time to get his cattle to a safer place.
It started coming up real fast, so we had to start moving our cattle out and get them to higher ground, and they just kept coming up and kept coming up.
He called us and said, hey, we got like 200 or 300 calves down in the bottom here, and I got to get them to higher ground. Anybody willing to help? There was probably 15 to 20 guys on horses. There was four-wheelers, feed trucks, just trying to get those cows out of the bottom.
By then, the rivers had crested, causing the worst flood that the area had seen in more than 100 years. Even a mile away from the rivers, people had to evacuate their homes. Most didn't have the resources to move their livestock so quickly, so they had to leave their animals on their own.
We got all our cattle out, and that was a pretty humbling experience. So I told myself, if I can be helped like that, I'm gonna put myself out there to help anyone, and that's what I did.
Now, many of the surrounding ranchers came together to help anyone they could in the face of this daunting flood.
He made a post, saying, hey, these floods are getting bad. If you guys need help, call me, reach out to me. I shared a post similar to it, and then it was spread like wildfire.
I couldn't imagine the feeling that those people were going through knowing that their cattle were gonna die.
The very first place that we pulled up to, there was an ambulance sitting there and a fire truck, and they were sitting on the bank waiting for us. They've got specific skills, and we've got some specific skills, and if we didn't help, these animals weren't gonna have a chance.
We actually ended up getting boats. We had a big posse of guys come together that had a bunch of boats, and we were going out and roping these cattle off the bow of these boats.
You had guys roping 1,200, 1,500-pound cows off the front of a boat, dragging them into the water. Usually a guy standing in the water, fighting a cow. You get a broke arm, drown, things could have got crazy.
That's where just the cattle handling know-how comes into play. There was times we were tying them up, putting them in the bottom of the boat on the smaller calves, and then there was times that we'd put a cow on each side of the boat and just float them to dry ground. And I can tell you that I've learned that a cow is a lot more resilient than I thought they were.
It was nonstop, very little sleep for, 10 days, somewhere in there. I had no idea it'd be anything like that.
Meanwhile, Erin Blevins was desperate for help. Her family had been forced to leave behind 9 horses on her dad's property.
It was helpless. It was a helpless feeling. There was water everywhere. It looked like a lake. We expected the worst, to be honest.
Erin contacted Casey the minute she saw his post.
We pulled up and we were in shock. Everything was underwater. When we put the boat out, we didn't know if the horses were dead or alive. When we went out across there, it started raining again. We had no idea what we was getting ourselves into.
Coming up, the rescuers put themselves in even more danger, risking it all for those helpless animals.
There's fences and T-posts and everything underneath the water that they couldn't see. They was running through it, getting cut up, skin up.
And later, a bomb cyclone.
I don't think any department could prepare for the water that we are having coming in.
But first, an important safety tip.
If you ever want to know how much of a difference one person can make to the world, become a disaster relief volunteer.
Whether helping a displaced family, providing care and comfort to an ill or injured service member or veteran, or even learning and teaching others how to respond in emergencies, you'll see firsthand how easy it is to change someone else's life for the better.
By donating your time and energy to helping people in communities get back up on their feet after a disaster, you will soon see it's through the efforts of ordinary people that we can do extraordinary things.
After catastrophic flooding in northeastern Oklahoma forced Erin Blevins to evacuate her recently widowed father's farm, she was desperate to get to his 9 horses that they had to leave behind.
It was really tough not knowing whether or not we were going to see them alive or dead when we could get to them.
Luckily, Casey Thomas and a team of cowboys stepped in with the skills needed to rope livestock from a boat.
You know what these people had been through here in the recent weeks before, and your heart just sank. So there was the river and a higher spot with the house on it, and it dropped off in a lower spot. And that water was running pretty hard, and then it went up on a high hill, and it was all dry ground.
This horse has been trapped since Thursday. And there's our high ground. So 3 of us get in a boat, go over there, and when we get in the pen with the horses, they're wild.
We just happened to rope them and pull them up to the boat and snub their nose off to keep their nose up out of the water. So there's fences and T-posts and everything underneath the water that they couldn't see. They was running through it, getting cut up, skin up. And once they see that dry ground, then they went right onto it.
In the midst of all that, on a fence post, head high, there's a black cat sitting there. Casey grabs this cat and says, I found a cat. Goes to put it in the boat, jumps out of the boat. Casey grabs the cat, puts it back in the boat, and we head back and tell them, hey, we saved your horses and got everything. And oh, by the way, we saved a barn cat. The lady burst into tears. Her mom had died 2 weeks prior to that. And she said all those animals were her mom's, and she said if I could have told you to save one thing, it'd been save that cat. So, I mean, it was a touching deal. It was pretty cool to be part of.
The water levels eventually receded, and although there is still debris to clean up, all of the horses are back with Erin and her dad.
These are some of our babies here, and they are happy and healthy and glad to not be in the water.
You see this time and time again. In the worst of situations, the best of humanity comes out. This was a perfect example of neighbors helping neighbors.
It was really cool to see there's still good people out there like that. It would just at the drop of a hat, help anyone.
We worked together well all during the whole event, and if it ever happens again, it's going to be the guys I call. I'll go right back with them again.
A hero to me is somebody who does something without question, without thinking of themselves. They just jump into action. And to me, those heroes are the gentlemen that came out and saved my dad's horses and the barn cat. Those are our heroes.
Coming up, a bomb cyclone causes severe flooding, and even the first responders need rescuing.
We were probably 20 to 30 feet from the house at that time, and the boat just sank real quick.
Many times where a small village or town just doesn't have the same budget for first responders that a big city does. So you'll end up having full fire departments that are all volunteer. That's right, people are risking their lives with no pay. And that's exactly what happened in north central Nebraska when they were hit with some epic flooding. The volunteers turned out to be the key to survival.
Just 25 miles west of Omaha, Nebraska is the village of Waterloo. And just north of that, you'll find the neighborhood of King Lake. This small community is served by a 58-member volunteer fire department. And because they're just north of where the Elkhorn and Platte Rivers meet, they keep an eye on potential flooding. In 2019, winter was late. So in March, there was still 8 inches of snow on the ground, and the rivers were partially frozen. And then it started to rain.
We hit a heat wave along with that rain. All conditions were against us. Our river was still covered with ice pack. The ground was frozen with frost. Everything ran off back into the rivers, which caused the river to flood.
Platte River is extremely high. It is very close to the top of the bridge, and more water is coming.
Large parts of Nebraska and the Central Plains were impacted by something called a bomb cyclone. A bomb cyclone is a low-pressure system that rapidly drops in pressure. With that dramatic drop in pressure can come winds, like in this case, in excess of 100 miles per hour, along with really heavy rain.
The wind was probably at 30 to 40 miles an hour, raining, snowing. We knew some of the roads were already impassable.
Water levels were exceeding the record flood stage, and people needed help.
Expect the unexpected. That's what these professionals are trained to always keep in the forefront of their mind. It's no wonder that the help was a reaction, not a thought.
We have an airboat, a Zodiac, and then flat bottom jet boat as well. But I don't think any department could prepare for the water that we are having coming in.
CJ Cunningham was at his mom's house in King Lake, trying to get things to higher ground. King Lake is in a low-lying area, so people there are used to flooding. But when CJ saw water approaching from a spot that usually stays dry, he knew he had to get his mom to safety.
I got her and the dogs up on this storage area and then right after that I was walking around grabbing a few things like food and water, and I started sloshing in water. From there on, it just kept rising and rising.
They spent the night there, perched 3 feet above the water. CJ went out a few times to check the flood level, but that ice-cold water just wasn't going down.
Until I got back in from that third time, we were planning on sitting it out, but I was kind of in shock. And I said, just get us on the list to be rescued and get us out of here.
That morning, Rescue Captain Dale Stork was dispatched to 7 homes in King Lake with firefighter Lee Daniels.
Lee was an experienced driver on the boat. I was kind of navigating. We'd had no real incidents so far. And then all of a sudden, as we're approaching that house, something happened to the airboat. Kind of felt the boat go back. I felt the props hitting the water. It might be a crate, it might be a propane tank, it might be just debris, but it just flooded instantly.
With 30 feet to CJ's house, Lee gunned the boat, and they made it over, crashing through one of the windows.
Down it went. When I went out of the boat, it was over my head at that point. You just do what you can because now you're in trouble, so now you have to get yourself out, but that's what we train for.
Coming up, things go from bad to worse.
Now we have 2 vehicles stuck. The loader was halfway filled up in the cab with water. That was my concern, was them sitting in that water for that long.
But first, another tip that can keep you safe.
Receiving a letter in this day and age is rare. However, a handwritten letter is one of the most genuine ways to show someone how grateful you are for them.
Whether by protection, rescuing people from harm's way, or administering first aid, our job is to help you and keep you safe.
A small gesture of thanks can mean the world to those brave men and women in uniform who risk their lives each and every day. So, if a first responder completely rocked your world, or even just to say thanks, send them a letter to spread gratitude for our heroic first responders.
In March of 2019, parts of north central Nebraska were underwater. CJ Cunningham and his mother were trapped in her home. An attempted rescue by firefighters Dale Stork and Lee Daniels turned disastrous when their airboat hit some debris and sunk, stranding them in 6 feet of freezing water.
Lee and I were kind of scrambling to get up out of the water. We scrambled to the ledge of the house, and that's when I put out an 88 that we were okay at that point. There were 2 people sitting up there with 2 dogs, and I kind of jokingly said, "Did you call for rescue?"
The firefighters made sure that CJ, his mom, and the dogs were stable, and then they stayed with them on the platform for about 10 minutes, until an 8-wheel Hemet, or tactical truck from Mead Fire, arrived.
And then we were able to crawl out the 2nd-story window onto the truck.
There was also a payloader following behind the Hemet to dig it out in case it got stuck. But as luck would have it, the loader got high-centered on a log and couldn't move.
Well, it got stuck, so now the truck couldn't move out of the way. The airboat sunk. We've got 2 patients and 2 dogs and rescuers that need to get out of here. The loader was halfway filled up in the cab with water. So we had 2 of our members in there that didn't have cold water gear on that were in that loader. That was my concern, was them sitting in that water for that long.
Levi Krause was out with the Nebraska Game and Parks airboat when he got dispatched to assist with the rescue.
As we pulled up there was a propane tank right where we needed to be, the tanker with people on it, power lines above, and obstacles in the water below.
The firefighters insisted on getting CJ, his mom, and the dogs out of there first.
We took them back in the first trip, then went back, started taking the firefighters to safety. This was not in anybody's pre-planning, nothing this big.
I was in awe of all the damage once we were on the airboat because everything was underwater and it wasn't even at its highest yet.
Waterloo, Valley, Meade, and all the departments involved went on to make a total of 217 rescues. The great news, there were no major injuries or fatalities. But there was unbelievable property damage. Months later, only a third of King Lake residents had been cleared to rebuild their homes. CJ and his mom are among the lucky ones.
This is where the water stopped and crested. This height right here. And this is where the airboat hit, and the guys jumped up on this windowsill and got out of the water temporarily. And then here's still kind of a wheel rut from probably the 8-wheeler. A hero to me is anybody that puts their own personal well-being in danger to help another. All of the fire and rescue guys during this flood were heroes.
Today, CJ is getting the chance to meet the team of rescuers under better circumstances.
You guys are all volunteers, and you basically were coming in and saving everybody. And you did a great job.
I said, once we get to that house, I know we're safe. We hit that and both climb in, and we sit on the windowsill, kind of collect our thoughts there for a minute. And Dale looks up, and there you guys were sitting in there, and that was the house we were supposed to go to.
Sorry about your window, by the way.
Oh, it's all right. I'm going to replace them anyway, all of them.
Everybody was in danger, not just a couple people, and I mean, we were very fortunate.
Yeah. Waterloo really came together through this whole thing. You know, a lot of Property got damaged, but we didn't lose anybody. It was just a group effort of heroes.
Where there is natural disaster, there is always a first responder, but they really don't always get the appreciation that they deserve. So next time you see a first responder, I'll do it too. Let's tell them thanks. They deserve it. We appreciate everything that you do. I also appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ginger Zee. Hope you'll join us next time.